Hello to all you vacation rental pioneers out there. My name's Matt Landau, and this is Unlocked, the podcast series that introduces you to the world's leading vacation rental innovators by diving deep into one single key, one specific best practice or technique that opened the door and changed the game. Sarah Nye is a ball of positive vacation rental juju. She should put that on her business card. She's an Inner Circle member based in Asheville, North Carolina, behind Pop Rentals. And she's come to learn the hard way the role of permitting and regulation, how that can affect a property management company of any size in really any town or city. Most people in this position would have trouble dealing with, much less articulating so passionately, the kind of regulation that Asheville faces. And if you haven't had to deal with this kind of thing just yet, it's worth listening to very carefully. Sarah sitting on my living room couch is worth listening to always. Here's me and Sarah. My name's Matt Landau, and this is Unlocked.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, who are you?
My name is Sarah Nye.
And where are we?
We are in the wonderful city of New Orleans.
What are you doing in town? What did you come here for?
I visit New Orleans 2 or 3 times a year. I have very dear friends that live here, and but coincidentally, an amazing women's summit, the Vacation Rental Women's Summit, happened last week, and it was just incredible. And I'm just still here, staying.
Biggest takeaway from the summit?
Sense of community and shared belief that we're stronger together and we can really elevate each other and support one another as vacation rental professionals and as women.
And one of the interesting things I saw was it was one of the few conferences where you see a really nice mix of owners who are operating their own properties and managers who manage a number of others. And oftentimes in our industry, those two groups aren't really encouraged to hang out.
Yes.
But in this particular case, it was kind of like, regardless of what kind of business you have, come here because we're all here for this reason instead, to build. And like everything you said, I was very inspired.
I was too. Yeah. And Elizabeth Gilbert and the real Downton Abbey lady were both keynote speakers, and they were just inspiring. And Elizabeth Gilbert asking everyone, what is the most exciting thing in your life right now? For me, Matt, this is, and being on this podcast.
Oh, right on.
Yes.
Nice segue, by the way. Before we move into the actual podcast topic, let's go kind of into your business in Asheville. Tell me a little bit about it and maybe how you got started in it back a couple years back.
Yes, several years ago. On the heels of the Great Recession, I had a few different job changes, a former career in environmental health and regulation in Western North Carolina in the beautiful mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. And that recession hit the environmental world pretty hard. Layoff, grant funding disappeared, had to reinvent myself, and was working at Verizon for a little bit. I was willing to do really anything to stay in my community. And
which is, by the way, an amazing community. Asheville is just remarkable.
I'm glad you
place.
appreciate it. Yeah, it's a wonderful place to be able to share with others, because tourism is our number one industry. So I had the power of the cell phone. This was probably 2010. And I had an artist friend that had a vacation rental in East Tennessee in Douglas Lake, and she needed some help. And so I started assisting her with a lot of the email and communication and customer service sales things that I learned with Verizon, but also my science background gave me a real keen sense of detail and documentation and really knowing the importance of efficiency. I also wanted to work remotely. So I quickly made a name for myself and was determined to be an expert in this field, and came across you and your blog. That was probably early days, became an Inner Circle member, and along with Heather Bayer, listening to just really and reading everything that I could about the industry, and was fascinated that it was really something I could make a living in Asheville doing, and sharing my wonderful city and in a way that I that felt authentic. So this was still kind of before the rise of Airbnb. This was vrbo.com. This was HomeAway, and they merged and things changed there, but I just kept with it. And my name got out, and quickly 2 other artists in Asheville each had 2 and 3 properties, and they felt comfortable hiring me on as well, taking care of their condos, apartments, and lofts.
This is, I think, where we start getting to your unlocked tactic or concept. And those properties were located all in the central business district. Is that correct?
Yes.
Which is commercially zoned.
Correct, yes.
And it sounds to me like there might be a parade coming down the street outside of my apartment.
It is Mardi Gras time.
It is Mardi Gras. So those of you who may hear some drum beats in the background, that is our own private musical background for this podcast. And once you took on those properties, it sounds like things started to get heated in Nashville with regards to regulation, residents and neighbors starting to get a little bit frustrated or
Yes.
agitated.
Yes.
And you kind of decided to put your neck out there.
Yes.
And start attending town hall meetings, things like that.
City council, planning and zoning, writing letters, really trying to get other hosts, property managers, owners, all really involved in trying to advocate for fair and reasonable rules around the act of renting less than 30 days. That was really in the eyes of the city of Asheville where they drew the line and really felt that it became a commercial activity in these residentially zoned areas. They felt it was on the books, not allowed. So that's where we tried our best to say, look, this isn't going away. There are a lot of these gray areas, commercial corridors, where some commercial activity already existed. We felt that they created spot zoning in some of those areas. And we just said, hey, could you please consider us in a conditional use in allowing, a permit and a process for us to do what we do.
So to be clear, there was a commercial zone, which occupied a couple blocks worth?
Probably about 1 square mile of the central business district.
And anything within that zone was potentially a commercial business.
Yes, it could be.
Qualified.
Correct. So that's where the restaurants, and this is really the heart of downtown. So you have all types of uses down there, hotels. And around this time, there were quite a few hotels being built.
Okay, something tells me in your voice that was maybe part of this drama. I'd like to take a quick moment to share a little vignette that I keep coming back to. And it's the vacation rental movement like a parade that's coming through town. As independent owners and managers, we can either jump in and join the action, or we can watch it pass by. And as you can hear from this conversation, joining in on the parade means innovating, adopting new technology, and doing things that haven't been done before. This podcast would not be possible without the support of Point Central, a company that epitomizes innovation. Their property automation services like smart locks and smart thermostats allow us to focus on the highest value jobs, in the process delivering a more seamless experience to the people that we work with. Head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. That's pointcentral.com/VRMB. Thanks to the Point Central team for their leading role in our proud vacation rental parade. Now let's get back to the show. So you got your commercial zone. You've got several other zones. I heard you use the phrase commercial corridor, but there was also conditional use zones. There was mixed use zones, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah.
And then there was entirely residential zones out in the countryside.
Right, or just historic neighborhoods. And coincidentally, a lot of those in that historic neighborhood of Montford, there are bed and breakfasts. And so that would be an example of a conditional use or spot zoning where obviously a bed and breakfast, commercial use, lodging was back in the 80s allowed and provided the proper permit. And so we were kind of asking for the same.
And from a vacation rental business health standpoint, like trying to avoid as many risks to a vacation rental business, the areas that were not commercial had greater risk.
Yes.
So you had, I'm guessing, neighbors who could potentially complain.
Yes. Yes.
And as you got closer to the commercial tag, your risks went down?
Right. If you had your accommodation in a commercially zoned area, or if somehow you had bought a structure that had already been given a commercial use. So maybe an old Victorian home that at some point was converted from a residential use to commercial use. So it turned it into offices
And at the time you were being approached by various property owners in all of these sort of gray zones.
Yeah.
And they were saying, hey, Sarah, you seem like you made a nice name for yourself in this industry. Manage our properties.
Right.
And what did you do or say?
It usually started with a 15-minute phone call. I usually would just keep it at that. And if I felt, I would ask a few key questions: physical location, how long they own the property. And in those gray areas, I would typically visit the property and just assess sort of the condition of it. And a lot of the points that the city would bring up were building code concerns. So fire suppression, egress and ingress. So
what does that mean? Egress?
Really, how are you going to get out if there's a fire? Where are the exit points? Is there, a ladder? So I knew that those were sort of the architectural and building code things that seemed to be what the city consistently was evaluating in these gray areas. And the more people that I visited and would follow up with, it seemed that the city said, you got to get an architect out here. And the architect would be able to design and upfit the home. But that really caused a cost barrier for some of these property owners that felt they were very, very close to being able to have this use and take advantage of the tourism market. And some did and paid a lot of money and would get the proper permits for the use with the help of our architectural plans.
And beyond just potential investments in the actual property, there was a lot of time in committing yourself to figuring out these rules and getting, I'm guessing, permits and applying and not waiting.
Yeah, and the city would move the target, and they kind of still are a little bit of some nuances about what is on the book currently now. So,
and is that frustrating?
Yeah, I mean, I removed myself from it because I just at some point had to just focus on my business and the advocacy. And some people have picked up the torch and are carrying it on and continuing to refine the rules that help homeowners be allowed to have that activity and take advantage of tourism.
So when you said focus on your business, does that mean revert back to commercial zone only?
Yes. Yeah,
what does that alleviate?
It alleviates a lot of just uncertainty, because at any point, and you've talked about this on your show, that, what controls do we have in maintaining, and controlling our revenue? And if the rules change, they could tomorrow. And if you're not a part of it, you're at risk. So, I felt it was important to get involved and understand the rules and see where it was going. And to me, it was just going to stay only in the commercially zoned areas. And other areas would take a lot of work in order to get that permit. And I've just kept it in the central business district.
Kept it commercial.
Mm-hmm. Kept it commercial, yeah.
I'd like to try to summarize what I just learned, and please add anything that I may have missed or correct me if I'm wrong. But upon entering the burgeoning vacation rental industry, when you did in the commercial center of Asheville, you began to find that the industry was growing, and that the talking points from all different sides of the argument were beginning to get louder. And you decided to stick your neck out there and sort of represent the independent owners and managers of Asheville. And in that process, you began to get approached by lots of other owners and managers that had properties maybe that were not in that core commercial zone. And you loved that idea because it seemed like a perfect fit. Yeah. However, your investment, both time and potentially their money, ended up almost costing you more than it could benefit, just because so many of the variables were outside of your control. And in the end, you decided that what was safest and probably least stressful for you and your business was reverting back to an area that is pre-zoned as commercial, where it's not to say that everything is going to be straightforward, but at least the risks and the threats are at the lowest end of the spectrum as might exist in Asheville. And that's a lovelier place to be. Accurate?
Yes, that is unlocked for sure. Yeah, well said.
And if you were now going into a new place, is that something you, or giving advice to someone who's considering entering a vacation rental market, is that something you would tell them to consider?
Absolutely. Know your zoning. Yeah, speak to your city before you make the investment. Do your research. Most newspapers are following this subject. So it's definitely, as we know, something every city all over the world. So it's doesn't really seem to be blanket rules everywhere. And there's certainly a lot of nuances to each area.
The cops are coming to get you.
Mm-hmm. I haven't done anything.
I'm just a visitor here.
Just a visitor.
Thank you for your thought leadership.
Thank you. High five. Yeah.
And to close, just a quick reminder of who made this episode possible. It's Point Central, the property automation experts of our industry. Head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And when you use that page, you'll become eligible for free HVAC analytics, which tells managers when the HVAC starts to misbehave before our guests get upset. This also makes property owners happy by taking care of the problem before it becomes too expensive. And if you're feeling cheerful, please also consider writing us a quick review in your podcast app. We read every single one of them, and we pass them along to our esteemed guests. This industry is growing up quickly, my friends. This industry is unlocked.